Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast, here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co-host, Aiden Mulcrone. Aiden, kind of a impromptu decision to do a podcast today. I texted you late last night asking if you were available just because I wanted to react to what we saw on the basketball court last night, from a team that we've been very bullish on going back to the off season and high expectations. And then Michigan State comes out and lays an egg in the season opener. Just a really stunning development. Now, I will say, and I don't say this to make excuses in any way, shape, or form, but James Madison was better than I thought they were. I did not know this, and this is on me for not doing a little bit more, background research, but I did not know that they were the favorites to win the Sun Belt Conference this season, at least the preseason favorites. But you can kind of see why after what we witnessed last night. That team was very aggressive. They came out and really punched Michigan State in the face with their physicality early, ton of fouls. But it did seem like being super aggressive was part of James Madison's game plan. And, after the game, Michigan State's players said that they weren't surprised by the physicality and it didn't catch them off guard, but it certainly looked like it did. And the Spartans had a hard time getting anything going offensively and found themselves behind early, that's a problem that this program has had going back for a couple of years. So before I get too out ahead and dive completely in, just your reaction as you were watching the game. I was in the arena. I don't believe you were in the arena.
No, I watched the game from home, and the commentary before the game kind of talked about how James Madison was predicted to win the Sun Belt, which I was a little surprised by, but at the same time, it still feels inexcusable to lose to a team like that for Michigan State. I feel a little silly because you published an article about MSU that I wrote about MSU potentially winning a national championship this year and kind of laid out some of the reasons why, and it was published hours before the game,
right?
And they go out and do that. So maybe I should say they're gonna lose the rest of their games this season. Maybe I should say there's no chance they're gonna hire Urban Meyer. Maybe I should say, I don't know. But
you got to have some reverse jinxes going on here.
Right. Right.
It is funny. And I thought about this right away, even as the game, late in the first half, when Michigan State is, trailing for the whole half, I figured they were going to come back and win the game eventually. Like, even as they were trailing throughout the half, I really wasn't worried. I was thinking about this on the drive home. In the second half, Michigan State had a 10-0 run to take a 6-point lead. And I was kind of like, okay, like that was the run that I was waiting for. And they're going to be able to squeak this one out and survive this and get away with the scare. Well, James Madison kept coming back. But it wasn't really until I would say the 3-minute mark of like 3 minutes left in the game that the thought even occurred to me that Michigan State might lose this game. And I think it was after James Madison retook the lead after that 6-point deficit that Michigan State had put them in. And so, but immediately, like even in the first half, as State gets off to a really slow start, I'm thinking, you wrote the article, 3 reasons why Michigan State can win the national championship. And then I kind of doubled down on it with taking something that, Jay Billis wrote in his top 68 article. And I put out an article about, Jay Billis thinks that this is a national championship caliber team. And then, as you said, hours later, Michigan State is suffering a stunning upset loss at home. The first November home loss for Tom Izzo in his career. The first loss for Michigan State at home in the month of November since 1986. So just unprecedented stuff here. Seen in the comment sections, Heckplant points out that Michigan State's shooting performance was dreadful. I thought about that a little bit too, because one of your key points was in your article that you wrote was the shooting. And we saw that against Tennessee, though. Like, there was some problems that carried over from that Tennessee exhibition into this game against James Madison, but the shooting was not one of those problems in the exhibition game. That was a flying, high scoring affair, and just nothing was dropping. 1 for 20 from 3. The free throw shooting was abysmal. They started 2 for 10. They end up, I think, 23 out of 37 from the line, which is just horrendous. And that's what happens. Like you can't shoot the ball that poorly and expect to beat anyone. And I get the point here with Eggplant saying, we still almost won, but I don't want to justify this though. Like I don't want to, and I'm not that's what Eggplant is doing, but like this is an issue, and I don't want to undersell the impact of this loss, but I don't want to overreact and go into panic mode either, because I don't think panic mode is justified here. But we do maybe need to readjust our expectations a little bit and allow this team to re-earn that. Like I'm not ready to count this team out. But they do need to re-earn some of that, most of that preseason hype and expectation. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think just the trust level of MSU kind of after the end of last season, where it's like, hey, okay, you beat a USC team that's pretty good, that, has struggled, and, you win with your guards. And then you go beat Marquette again, with guard play. And then you go to Kansas, you take Kansas State to the wire, which, was a really good team. So there's optimism that, hey, you played, 3 teams who had 3, all conference that were all had borderline All-American guards. So you're like, hey, okay, we return all of our guards, in Tyson Walker, Akins, Hogard. And you're thinking, okay, this is a recipe for success moving forward. And and then you go 1 for 20 from 3. And, that's a problem, especially when 2 of those guys who are returning are, over 40% 3-point shooters. Hogard shot well early in in the preseason. I know you talked about in the the Hillsdale game too, that you were like, yeah, like MSU was outmatched them in size, but Hillsdale still got rebounds. And I know you talked about that. So there's some, these are continuing issues that Michigan State is facing, that maybe we're like, hey, maybe we gave them too much credit, and maybe we've kind of, as we've gone along, even just dating back to the 2020 season, where it's like, hey, once this team grows and gets older, then they'll be okay. We really haven't seen that. These guys have gotten older, and they're still having the same issues. Ooh, is Matthew not here anymore? Ooh, looks like Matt is not here anymore. Usually I'm the one with the technical difficulties, but I'll just continue a little bit too. I see some comments about Malik Hall. There have kind of been some issues that have gone on with Malik Hall. Not only last year, but kind of his 4 years, just the lack of consistency. And I think that's really, impacted them this year with the rebounding. Akins was the leading rebounder with 11 rebounds, and then you have Matty Sissoko and Carson Cooper and Malik Hall. I think they all combined for 11 rebounds. So I think that's another big issue, kind of like I touched on earlier, that really needs to improve. And I don't think Akins had the greatest game, but the fact that he had those 11 rebounds, was the leading rebounder, that's not a good sign for the rest of the team as well.
Right. Am I back in, Aiden?
Yep. Yeah, you're back in.
Right, cool. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I lost internet there for a sec, so I had to back out and come back in. But I did want to address. Did you address Todd's question while I was gone by any chance?
No, not really.
I will say, to your point, and you mentioned it briefly, Hogard did shoot the ball better in those 2 exhibition games from outside. Xavier Booker played a little bit yesterday, but we talked about, we think that he like there's a level that he needs to probably improve to, and to be able to be relied on maybe in that type of a game where all of a sudden you're in a dogfight. Malik Hall really struggled. We'll get into that a little bit later with him and Cohen Carr and things like that. But like, I think Todd brings up a fairly decent point here. Now, you don't expect Tyson Walker to shoot 0 for 5 from outside, from deep. You don't expect, I mean, shoot, 1 for 20. I mean, no, I've never seen anything like that in a college basketball game. I can't recall.
Yeah, me
now,
neither.
I think there might have been a game that Michigan played last year where they didn't hit a 3, but they didn't have 20 attempts. I don't know. Like seems like I remember a game like that for Michigan last year, but
I think MSU had that too. I think MSU
did they have one?
Didn't hit a 3 in, I want to say it was the Purdue game.
Yeah.
I think that sounds about right. They lost. I think
the one
they
at
went down
Breslin?
to the wire. Yeah, I think they went down to the wire with them, and they didn't hit a 3. I'm trying to think. I think it was MSU in a conference game.
Okay.
But regardless, yeah,
yeah. I mean, one of the things that you pointed out, even in your piece, when you talked about how you were you expected good things from the shooter, but you did from the shooters, but you mentioned that losing Joey Hauser was a bigger deal, and I think we saw that play out a little bit last night, where some like misses can become contagious too, and so when Walker's missing shots, when Akins can't hit a shot from outside, we mentioned Hogard, that can become contagious, and I don't know that just the fact that Joey Hauser shot better than 47% from 3 last year, and that is going to be a significant loss. We've talked about in previous shows that we think maybe Xavier Booker can take on some of that as a stretch 4, but we didn't want to put too much on his plate like right away. It wouldn't be reasonable to come in and expect him to shoot 47% from 3. Like, that's a pretty ridiculous number if you really think about it. So yeah, we don't want to panic, but like, yeah, there's a bit of a concern because Malik Hall's shooting form and the confidence in his outside shot has been gone, really, even going back to last year. I mean, I noticed this when he came back from injury and finished the season. Like, there's a hitch in his shot. He's not releasing it with much confidence. It takes him a while to get the shot off. And so I am concerned there. But I still think that this team is capable of scoring in bunches. I think we saw that against Tennessee, a week ago or so. So I'm not hitting the panic button yet, but I think Todd does bring up a good point that, is there going to be another guy who emerges alongside these two, who can be shooters?
Yeah, I think Kyle brings up a good point about the veterans too. I think, I mentioned Malik Hall, but the rest of those guys, like Mady Sissoko, I think he is who he is.
Right.
And AJ Hogard, while he has shown flashes of making some highlight plays and some great passes and vision, he also has those turnovers and kind of like plays that you're just questioning. I think the biggest thing for me, just kind of at the end of the game, was the free throws, and
Sure.
it was the free throws from the guards was the big thing, because Carson Cooper, while you ideally don't want him taking free throws, I wouldn't bet money that he would make any of them. And I think this is where Jackson Kohler being hurt hurts his team. And I think Xavier Booker moving forward is probably going to be more in the 5 spot at the end of the game. But the fact that Tyson Walker misses, I think it was like 2 or 3 free throws in the last like 5 minutes of the game, that really hurts. And I hate to put that much pressure on him because he did score 35.
Sure.
So there's got to be more help just all around. And yeah, again, like it just comes down to this whole whole team, and that, the Tyson Walker kind of carrying the load, but that supporting cast needs to be a lot, a lot more improved. And we, moving forward, we're really going to see whether or not Tom Izzo is going to start playing freshmen, because he did mention in his post game, he's like, I'll play whoever.
Right.
And it's kind of now, the ball's in his court. He's just got to prove it.
Sure. No, there was a few things that stood out in the press conference after the game, and one of them was Izzo flat out saying, "I don't have good leadership right now," which that's a total detriment on the veterans of this team. And if I want to be even more specific, I think it's to the detriment of AJ Hogard. Like, you're a fourth year guy now, and you've got to be better. And Izzo did mention that he, AJ, and Tyson were cramping up a little bit, and first game, that's not overly surprising. But again, we've seen this with AJ, where when he's really dialed in, he's one of the best guards in the Big Ten, if not the country. But he has these games where it's like he's not all the way engaged, and it's very evident. Just the difference in his play between those two states of mind is very evident. And unfortunately for Michigan State, it was the lack of focus this time. I will say that early on in the game, Izzo and the staff, they were trying a lot of different lineups to see, what could work, because nothing was working early, especially on offense. And but they tried a lot of different rotation, a lot of different lineups out there. They did settle on more of a small ball lineup, and they finished the game that way as well. And I did think that the full court pressure helped Michigan State kind of settled into the game and put some pressure on James Madison. I think, again, I would rather see maybe that be from the get-go. You're putting pressure on opposing teams and wearing and being the aggressor, because that's been a problem for this team. Is it seems like Michigan State has been comfortable just easing their way into games, which there can be you don't want to come in and be too amped up or try to force things, but there's a difference between that and then being the aggressor. And there was no doubt that it was James Madison who was the aggressor last night. Let's talk about lineup stuff a little bit, because this is what's being talked about in the comment section a little bit. We've touched on the shooting. It was one of my observations from last night. I think Cohen Carr needs to be in the starting lineup. He is an energy guy. He plays hard. I don't know that he has some of the intangibles that like a Malik Hall brings, just because of the veteran presence. There's probably some defensive things that Malik Hall does better than Cohen Carr, because he's played a lot more college basketball. But I think that's outweighed by just the energy that Cohen brings, and I mean, the numbers back it up. Like, this isn't me going on a limb. What are your thoughts, I guess, on that, Aiden? Because to sit a fifth year senior, or whatever Malik Hall is at this point, for a true freshman, it is a little bit outside of Izzo's DNA. But like, even going back to the Tennessee exhibition, Cohen Carr was the best player in terms of plus minus. I think he was like plus 22 when he was on the floor against Tennessee, and Malik had the worst plus minus. He was a minus. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was the worst. So is it time to make a change? Is that too much of a quick reaction after one game? What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think it's that much of a quick reaction. Again, the sample size for Malik Hall is 5 years, and
Sure.
the sample size for Cohen Carr is 2 exhibition games and 1 regular season game. So that's the problem, I think, is just kind of assessing that. And Malik Hall's done well. Again, it's the consistency issue. I think he's done well in some games where he'll go 5 for 5 from the floor. He'll get some scrappy rebounds and make some big defensive plays. And then the next game, it's almost non-existent. So I think, Carr, and I would even say Booker. I think Booker is worth kind of a shot to, to crack the starting lineup at
I think is a good role player. A guy who can go in, defend, rebound. Somebody in the comment section says, yeah, he's good for a few hacks now and then too, which that's okay in the post. If you're a role player and you're not expected to play, 24 to 28 minutes, you can go in, you can give some fouls. That's fine. I do think there's still a ceiling on Carson Cooper. Like, he's not this, he wasn't this 4-star recruit or anything like that. He was, a one-time, was considering redshirting last year. So, but he has developed, and I think his ceiling is higher than what, like, as to your point about Malik Hall, we kind of know what Monty Sissoko is at this point as well. And I will say about Malik Hall, even when he was at his best, and I'm thinking more so not so much last year, but 2 years ago, maybe at times last year before he got hurt. But even when Malik Hall was at his best, it was like the consistency problem was a problem. Like, he would be really good one game and then just a non-factor in the next game. Whereas, again, to your point, Cohen Carr through the scrimmage, the exhibitions, and now this first game, he just comes in and he produces. And that's, like, he has been consistent so far through 3 games. Small sample size, but I think you got to run with that and go with it. I thought you made a good point with Jackson Kohler being out as well, as far as you can do offense, defense at the end of the games, and then if there's contact, a better free throw shooter. So, but Michigan State's going to have to deal with that because he's not going to be back around until maybe Christmas. So this is what they've got for now. I want to talk about Tyson Walker a little bit. Izzo did say after the game that he didn't think that Walker had a very good game, which it was like a whoa, like, really? I mean, he scored 35. But I think probably what Izzo is more so referring to is the 0 for 5 from 3, the 6 missed free throws. I think at least 2 of them, if not 3, were in overtime. And so, and the competitor that Tyson is, I'm sure he probably lost some sleep last night from those overtime misses from the foul line. Now, he was probably dog tired, so I can kind of understand that a little bit. But I will say the encouraging thing from about Walker, and I wrote about this in my observations, was he has proven himself at this point to be, when you need a bucket, when you need a guy to take over, he is that guy. And there was a stretch even last season, I'm thinking first half of the year, where there was a question about, does Michigan State have one of those guys? Because it was, nobody had emerged. He's emerged at this point. So more thoughts from you on Tyson Walker, about Izzo's comments maybe too, that he didn't think Walker had the best of games. What's your read on that? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think Walker has, shown that when the last possession, the last shot in the game, I think it's Walker that's going to have the ball in his hands. So there's that. Yeah, I mean, he did score 35. I think it was a bit inefficient just because, that he did take a lot of shots. So there is that aspect, but I don't know how to say this, but I don't think there were any kind of wins last night. There weren't any like crazy good takeaways. Walker did what he had to do to help keep the team in the game, and maybe the leadership is partially because I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but is he stepping up? Is he not? Kind of who are the leaders? And I know you mentioned Hogard as one of them, but I think Walker, I don't know if people really feed off him or not. I think they do, but I think in terms of vocally, I think Hogard is a lot more vocal than he is. I think Malik Hall is also a lot more vocal than Walker is. So just finding a little bit extra in terms of leadership to get that ball rolling, and kind of figuring that out would probably be my biggest takeaway in terms of where Tyson Walker's at right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I wanted to throw up a couple questions from the comment section. Eggplant asked about the turnovers. Somebody addressed this in the comments, and I appreciate that. But just, yeah, so Michigan State had 11. That's not bad. 11 turnovers isn't like if you average 11 per game, it's maybe one or two more than you'd like to average. Of course, like nobody wants to turn the ball over. But as far as like what Michigan State has done over the last several years, 11's not bad at all. So not terribly concerned about that. GLS asked, was Michigan State out coach? I think they were. I think James Madison came in with a very specific plan. And the plan was we're going to be ultra aggressive and super physical. And they did get a ton of fouls called on them. There was 18 whistles against James Madison in the first half. Michigan State was shooting free throws all half long, but they started 2 for 10 and finished the half, I think, 12 for 22. So, hey, strategy worked. And then James Madison did a good enough job in the second half of, they were still aggressive and they still had some, what I would call silly fouls, but they didn't foul any. I don't think they fouled anybody out. Maybe one guy. Yeah. Number 1, Friedel, he fouled out, and I guess they had 2 guys, the number 22, the center. So they did have a couple guys foul out, but I thought they managed that pretty well in the second half. And hey, it was good enough to come into East Lansing and knock off the preseason number 4 team in the country. So yeah, I think it's very fair to say that Michigan State was out coached last night. And then Todd asks about Norman getting the red shirt. I think it's a little early. I don't know what the red shirt rule is for basketball. Anyway, how many games you can play in. But I think it's a little early to talk about that at this point. I think of the 4 freshmen, there's no doubt that Norman was the least immediately ready to play. I think he could work his way into the rotation. It could come down to if he can knock down shots, because as you mentioned, Todd, earlier, this team could maybe use another shooter. And so is Norman a good enough shooter to warrant those minutes? Because you're probably going to lose something a little bit on the defensive end. And we know how Izzo doesn't like to sacrifice anything on the defensive end, even for offense. So there's probably some things there for him to work through, but I think it's a little early to assume that Norman will be redshirted. See if there's any other comments here.
I will say, just moving forward, I think what MSU's biggest point of emphasis, because obviously we didn't really, I think, nobody really thought, the 3-point shooting would be that much of a concern. But as you're looking through the comments, I think, the rebounding has been an issue that we have mentioned and we have talked about, that has been a point of concern. And, moving forward, it was clear James Madison was a more physical team, and that's going to be an issue, not only when you play Duke, when you play Arizona, when you play Baylor, when you play Purdue, when you play, Illinois, Indiana, like that's kind of not only a setup for, now until December, it's a setup for now until March. And, did MSU have too high of expectations? Maybe a little bit, but they're still a top 25 team. They're one of the better teams in the country. The Big Ten is not the greatest. They're still gonna compete to win the league. But losing that game feels inexcusable still. No matter how good James Madison is, just because of what you're returning. And sure, you could say, if they didn't go 1 for 20 from 3, that they would win, or they're in a way better place. It's a whole different game, but they didn't, and that's going to be kind of a looming question moving forward. And they just got beat, not only in the backcourt, but in the front court. So is that, with Kohler out too, I think that's a huge concern, because I don't think they're finding any kind of scoring there between, Matty Sissoko and Carson Cooper offensively being a threat. And then you have, how many minutes is Booker going to get? And then how many minutes is Carr going to get over, the more veteran players.
Yeah, no, that's valid, and I think Carrie Ellis brought up in the comment section, like, and again, we're not trying to push people over the edge, we're not trying to overreact here,
Yeah.
but I do think it's safe to at this point say, okay, now you have to the preseason expectations and the preseason hype. Let's push that off the ledge for now, and have this team like re-earn some of that, because I think that might have been part of the problem last night. Is this team for 6-7 months has been told how good they are going to be, and that's not just from like you and I, Aiden. That's not just from like the Michigan State media market. Whenever Izzo was asked about this in the offseason, he embraced it completely. He's like, yeah, this is where we should be. So it wasn't like all of this expectation was just heaped on this team from outside sources. Like, they felt good about themselves as well, and did not shy away from any of that talk about competing for championships and all that. And beyond that, like, doubled down on it themselves. So I think that's noteworthy. I want to address Eggplant's question, with the fouls and how nobody fouled out. I will say James Madison was pretty deep. They played 11 guys last night. Now, some of that was probably out of necessity, but and they struggled to get some things going offensively too. I mean, they didn't shoot the ball much better than Michigan State. And Michigan State shot at 36%. James Madison shot 37%. James Madison was 28% from three. It's much better than what Michigan State was, but that's still not a good number. And then they were better from the free throw line, 75%. So, I mean, that's part of your game right there. But James Madison showed some depth that I don't think we expected to see as well. So just want to address that. Eggplant also asked about the center. I don't know for sure. I don't know that Izzo will make, and he could, but I don't know that he'll make 2 starting lineup changes. I don't know if he'll make any, but I think maybe we'll see one. I don't know if it'll be Cooper for Sissoko or Cohen Carr for Hall. But I do think the one thing about playing Southern Illinois is it does give you a chance to, not that we want to immediately overlook an opponent again, but it does give you a chance to tweak some things and find some stuff out before you go play Duke. So yeah, they do need to find, they need to discover something that works, and especially at the beginning of the games, just coming out with a little more energy and focus and ready to go. How far does MSU fall in the rankings? I'll let you address this one, Aiden.
Yeah, I mean, I think they still, if they take care of business against Southern Indiana on Thursday, they'll be fine. I don't see them dropping out of the top 25 immediately, but again, you go play Duke. I think you lose that and you're 1-2. I think, the rankings don't matter at this point.
Sure.
I think they'll still be ranked even if they lose to Duke, but you're kind of looking at a team that, had a lot of momentum coming into the season, and it seems like it's lost within a week. So It's kind of just, for me at least, or from my perspective, it's not even kind of what are the rankings after the Duke game, or I'm saying, hypothetically, if they lose, it's more of, where do they go in terms of back to the drawing board? Are they gonna stick with the older guys, or is Izzo gonna try everything and anything to make it work, just moving forward, not only, again, like with a tough schedule kind of coming up, but for the rest of the season?
Sure. No, to your point, like, after a loss like that, the last thing that any of us, and certainly the team, and this is true of all times, but the last thing any of us should be thinking about or worrying about is, what's Michigan State's ranking going to be? Because it's early in the year. Obviously, there's a lot of things to work on. So, like, that'll take care of itself.
I'm not trying to be rude about answering the question, but I'm not trying to blow the question off, but that's really a big concern, just in terms of, where they are moving forward.
Sure. Jim asked, who's the second scoring option? Like, I'm not punting on Jaden Akins. I think Jaden Akins is going to be fine this year and be really good this year. He had a bad night last night. He was 2 for 10 from the floor, 0 for 4 from 3. He did have 11 rebounds, and he was challenged. I can't remember which exhibition it was that he was challenged by Izzo to be more involved in the rebounding. Well, he responded to that here with 11 rebounds from the guard spot, which is impressive. Like, Akins is not going to shoot 20% from the floor all year. Hogarth's not going to shoot worse than 20% from the floor. I think there's some things you can look at with the stats, and they're so, to be frank, they're so bad and they're so ugly that, like, water's going to find its level a little bit here. So I don't think we need to be too concerned about, like, they don't have a second scoring option. And I'm not saying, Jim, that's what you're doing. I'm just saying that I still believe in Jaden Akins. I still when it comes to Hogarth, like I mentioned it earlier, it seems like you either get good AJ or bad AJ, and that's kind of what you get. And last night was bad AJ. So I did think Jeremy Fears for first game as a freshman, he came in and it was okay. That's kind of what Izzo said as well, that he was okay. So with that, like, let's kind of put a bow on this, Aiden, and then we are going to get into football tonight, and we're going to go ahead and do our preview show for Michigan State, Ohio State. I figured we might as well just lump all of this into one show because as you guys can probably imagine about the Ohio State game at the end of the week, we're not super high and super optimistic. So let's just get it all out of the way, in one show. But let's put a bow on basketball first. Here's where I'm at. As far as, I think somebody corrected me in the comments, is it Southern Indiana is who they play on? Yeah. I think I said Illinois. So Southern Indiana on Thursday. I think Michigan State will come out and roll Southern Indiana pretty convincingly. That probably, that says a lot about, like, the opponent is obviously, like, that's obvious, but, like, this team's gonna be pretty pissed off. I bet they had a horrible day of practice. Now, I don't mean like quality of practice, but like as far as what Izzo had the team do in practice today, I'm sure was grueling. And then more game prep tomorrow. So I do think they'll come out with much more fire on Thursday, and then we'll see what it looks like against Duke, because Duke's a preseason national title contender is what that's the way they're talked about, but that'll be their first game against a real opponent, if you want to put it that way, as well. So and we'll see what it looks like. Like, again, we don't want to overreact here. So that's kind of where I'm at. I want to see, and I need to see Michigan State come out and act like Southern Indiana is this huge threat, and right from the get-go be the aggressor. That's where I'm at. Where are you at, Aiden, going into Thursday, and then looking ahead to Duke?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the Southern Indiana game I want to see is just rebounding. I think just dominating rebounding is the biggest concern, especially when you're playing kind of, I don't want to blow Southern Indiana off because MSU just lost to James Madison.
Sure.
But at the same time, when you are playing those kind of, mid-major, low-major programs, just kind of, you want to see the fundamental stuff. And like you said, you want to see them kind of take them over, just roll them, from the beginning. I think that's the biggest thing too, is just rebounding and kind of come out strong from the beginning. And I know Izzo's teams for the last 25 years have had trouble with, scoring droughts and turnovers. So, again, that's always that's never not a point of emphasis for Michigan State basketball.
Yeah. With that, we will turn our attention now to the football game, and we're gonna preview Michigan State and Ohio State, and also do our typical look at the Big Ten and looking around the country. So for those of you who don't want to hang around for our football talk, appreciate you tuning in for basketball. Would love to have you stick around, continue to ask questions in the comment section, and we'll address those as we go. With that, let's get into it. Michigan State and Ohio State, 52nd all-time meeting between the two programs. The Buckeyes lead the series 36-15. In the Mel Tucker era, which I am continuing, I am including this season in that era until there's a new regime in place. But Michigan State has really not fared well against the Buckeyes. Michigan State has been outscored by Ohio State 157-39 in the 3 previous games against the Buckeyes. The game is in Columbus. Last year was in East Lansing. It was a 49-20 win for Ohio State. Ohio State's favored this year by 31.5, huge number, and the over-under is 47.5. So, Aiden, initial thoughts about the game. I think we can get through this fairly quickly. We're going to do our normal rundown here, but early thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a struggle game for Michigan State. They've always kind of, Ohio State's always given them fits, like you alluded to in the Mel Tucker era. So I think Ohio State is a different team this year in terms of defensively. And, offensively, they've kind of struggled a little bit. But at the same time, MSU has struggled offensively and made their defense look good in bad years, and then kind of, always made their offense look like they were just running a clinic. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, no, it's a different Ohio State team than we've come accustomed to seeing. It's more of a defensive-led team, and but their offense still has weapons galore. They got Travion Henderson in the backfield. They've got Marvin Harrison Jr., who's the best wide receiver in college football. Emeka Ibuka is a very good receiver. Julian Fleming, former 5-star kid. So still plenty of weapons. Not as good in the offensive line as maybe previous years, and certainly not as good at quarterback as in previous years, as Kyle McCoy is making his first season as the starter. So, I don't think we need not too many initial thoughts needed in this one. So let's go ahead and move right into Big Ten at a glance, and this is where we not really preview, but we look at the best game of the week, the worst game of the week in the Big Ten, and then just a quick note on the other games going on in the conference this weekend. Obviously, the best game, I think everybody could agree here, it's number 3 Michigan, who is a 4.5-point favorite at number 11 Penn State. Aiden, this is one of our game of the week picks,
right?
So we won't do that yet. But early thoughts on this game. I think Michigan opened as a 6-point favorite in some sports books. Caesars today had it at 4.5, so maybe that number's come down a little bit. Initial thoughts about this matchup?
Yeah, I see it at 4.5, but I think it's really going to be interesting to see which Penn State team we're going to see. Are we going to see the team that kind of came out flat against Indiana, struggled to move the ball against Ohio State? Granted, Ohio State's really good, but sure, Penn State has a lot of weapons on offense, and just kind of figuring out how they'll utilize them. And they came back and scored 51 against Maryland last week. So we'll see which Penn State team we're gonna see. And there's kind of expectation of what Michigan team we're gonna see. They're gonna be tough. So yeah, I won't say anything more until later.
Okay. Both teams feature really good defenses, 2 of the top defenses in the country. Michigan, I think the thing I'm going to really look closely in this game is Michigan's run game, because that was the key to last year. I think they ran for over 250 yards against Penn State last season. Michigan hasn't been as effective on the ground this year. Part of that could be that they're throwing a little bit more with J.J. McCarthy, but interested to see that matchup, the Michigan run game against Penn State's defense after what happened in Ann Arbor last year. Worst game of the week. I feel bad about this, Aiden, but am I wrong for calling Ohio State, Michigan State the worst game in the Big Ten this week?
No, fair? You're not wrong at all. I think you laid it out pretty well. Kind of the recent history would really indicate that. So yeah.
Somebody did ask in the comment section, any chance at an upset? 1998, we talked about this in the last podcast briefly. Nick Saban, I think that was Saban in 98.
Yeah.
Went down to Columbus against the number 1 Buckeyes, and
Ooh.
Michigan State came away with a victory.
I think we lost.
Did we lose me? Or did we lose Aiden? Let us know in the comment section what's going on here. I think we might have lost Aiden. So I will continue here with the other games in the Big Ten. The next one on the list here, Indiana goes to Illinois. Illinois is a 6.5-point favorite. Maryland is at Nebraska. Maryland is a 2.5-point favorite in that one. Rutgers is at Iowa, and Iowa's favored by 1.5. And Minnesota at Purdue. Purdue is a 1-point favorite. Northwestern at Wisconsin. Wisconsin is favored by 11. Looks like we lost Aiden, so we will let him come back into the feed, and we'll keep going here. Sorry for the technical difficulties tonight. There's been more than usual, but we will continue with the show. Aiden's back. Welcome back, Aiden.
Yeah, I know.
All kinds of issues we're having tonight, but we'll continue. I finished up our Big Ten topic here. I don't think there's a whole lot other much more to talk about here. There is a couple of games in the Big Ten West that will continue to sort out that race, if you want to call it that. It's more of a stumbling contest is what it looks like more to me. But we'll move back into Michigan State and Ohio State with over-unders. We're just going to do 3 over-unders each tonight since we spent so much time on basketball. So we'll get right into those. I'll let you lead us off here, Aiden, with over-unders for Michigan State and Ohio State.
Yeah, so I'll lead it off. My first over-under is Michigan State 1.5 forced turnovers. So, do they continue forcing turnovers? I set it at 1.5.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to go under on 1.5 forced turnovers. And as always, audience, go ahead and play along with us in the comment section with our over-under section, and we'll throw those on the screen. I wouldn't be surprised maybe if Michigan State comes up with 1, but 2 against the Buckeyes I think will be tough. Eggplant likes them to go over 1.5, but I'll take the under.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over here. I just think that Ohio State has struggled to run the ball, and while I think MSU's rush defense also has struggled, I think Ohio State's kind of what they've done this year. Just their line hasn't been that great. They, a lot of people blame Kyle McCord, which he hasn't been, a first round level quarterback like they've had the last 5 years. But they still kind of trust him to throw the ball around. So I think MSU can take advantage of those and maybe cause some turnovers. So we'll see.
This plays into one of it's actually my second over under, but I'll hop it up and go this one right away because it does relate to turnovers. Jaden Mangum has been really good this season. He has 4 interceptions on the year, which is second most, maybe tied for second most or second most on his own in the Big Ten. And so I have an over-under. Jaden Mangum over-under 0.5 interceptions. So does he come up with another one against the Buckeyes?
Mm-hmm. I'll go under here. I think he won't get one. I think it could be some other guys. Watching the film, I think any team right now is looking at Jordan Hall, Simeon Barrow, and Jaden Mangum as the 3 biggest threats for Michigan State on defense. So I think they're going to try to go away from them. I think while Ryan Day has struggled at times, I think he has called good games and knows who to really take advantage of, especially against Michigan State the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'll go under as well on this one, just because it's hard to it's hard to pick out the specific guys who come up with the turnovers. We've tried to do it quite a bit actually this year, and even going back to last year a little bit with our staff predictions that come out at the end of the week. But it's really hard to nail the right guy. So I'll go under here for the safe bet. But I wanted to use it more as just an acknowledgement of how well that Jaden Mangum has played this season, and good young player. Looking forward to seeing him continue his career in a Michigan State uniform. We hope and we expect at this point. So, all right, Aiden, number 2 for you.
Yeah, so my second one is over under 19.5 points for Ohio State in the first half. So, in the first half, will Ohio State get to 20 points or not?
Interesting. That's a good one. And obviously I'm looking at my final score here. 19.5.
Yeah.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to go under 19.5 in the first half. It's more so just what we've seen from Ohio State's offense so far. Again, it's not this high-powered unit that we are accustomed to seeing. So I'll say under 19.5. And Ohio State has been kind of susceptible to slow starts this season. This would be a very large departure from what we've seen from Michigan State against these top 10 opponents, though. Washington came out and it was boom, 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 a lot of touchdowns early. Similar, not quite to that level, but similar against Michigan when it was 28-0 at halftime. So this would be a departure from that. So, but I'm going to go under here.
Yeah, I'm going to go under. I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about this. I think Ohio State has struggled in the first half games. You think about the Rutgers game. You think about Penn State. They struggled to pull away in the first half. Notre Dame. They kind of just took the lead. They took the lead at the end. So figuring that out, I think again they're gonna struggle the first half. But I think I don't want to give any spoilers, but I do think Ohio State still wins significantly. But I think MSU makes them work for it in the first half at least.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's throw up this question from Eggplant. Who does match up with Marvin Harris? Now, this is going to be a team effort. You're probably going to bracket him a lot with the safety over the top and things like that. But of the corners, Aiden, who do you think gets the assignment?
Oof, that's tough. I like the keyword matchup here and not who gives you the best chance to beat him, because outside of Marvin Harrison, you also have like you said, Emeka Ibuka, Julian Fleming. They have Carnell Tate's a 5-star freshman, so they're loaded everywhere. I think, yeah. It's hard. I think it's going to be Dylan Tatum. I know that's a size issue just because Dylan Tatum's a little bit shorter. I think he's around 5'11" or 5'10" ish, and then Marvin Harrison's 6'3", 6'4". And I remember walking past him at Big Ten Media Days, and I was like, that is he looked larger than JT Tuimalu, who's a 6'4" defensive end for Ohio State. So I was really surprised by how large of a human he is. So I think it's going to be hard either way, but Ohio State has really gotten him on some more shallow, kind of shorter routes to get that mismatch with playing kind of some under coverage where they could get him in if Michigan State is in a zone defense, get him on a matchup with the likes of, Cal Holiday or Jordan Hall. So, yeah, it's going to be a team effort, though, like you said.
Sure, yeah, it's going to be a tall task. And Michigan State could play a lot of zone this week as well and try to utilize it that way. So we'll see what happens. Moving on here, Michigan State over under 9.5 points, Aiden.
I'm going to take the over on this.
Okay.
Of 9.5. I think MSU can get a touchdown, maybe potentially 2. But I think they can get at least 1 touchdown. I know they've struggled to move the ball against, the likes of Washington and Michigan, who, are kind of considered worse defenses right now than Ohio State, but I think they can find a way to get at least, one score on the board. So I'll take the over of 9.5.
Okay. I'm spoiler alert here, but I'm taking the under. I hold Ohio State's defense in pretty high regard this year. I've been very impressed. I've watched quite a bit of their season, probably more so than I normally would, just because they've been in some tighter games because their offense isn't as dynamic as it's been. And every time I've watched them, I've come away impressed with their defense. I think their defense is as good, if not better than Michigan's. And Michigan shut out Michigan State a couple of weeks ago. So, and I'm sure there was a little bit of, it was the rivalry game. It was also the week that all of the sign stealing stuff came out. And so Michigan was probably a little pissed off and wanted to, make a point, if that's what you want to call it. But, so I think it's going to be, I'm not sure where the offense comes from for Michigan State, and that's my concern here. So I'm going to take the under on 9.5, unfortunately. So, all right, Aiden, you should have one more and hit me with it.
Yeah. I don't know if you have a question similar to this. Maybe you do, but it's not really an over under, but it's more of kind of a yes or no of, does Sam Leavitt play in the game against Ohio State?
I was going to write a story about this and I haven't gotten to it, but it is a bit of a conundrum. We've talked about this with the whole redshirt thing with Sam Leavitt. I'm pretty sure I'm reading too much into this, but like there's been a couple times where Harlan Barnett has been asked about this, Sam Leavitt himself has been asked about this, and they've said, we haven't discussed it a whole lot. And they'll give some kind of answer that says we want to do what's best for the team. Well, there's the difference between best for the team and best for the program. But they did say best for the team, and I think what's best for the team is Sam Leavitt being available to play. We've talked about how it's a little thin at quarterback if Leavitt is not available, because you have Caden Hauser, and then a walk-on is the next guy, and Harlan Barnett was even asked about Alante Brown being a potential like emergency quarterback. So it gets very thin very quickly. So with that, I'll go yes, we do see Sam Leavitt against Ohio State. I don't know that I would make that decision though. Like I'm not, that's just me making a prediction. It's not me endorsing one way or the other, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I think the answer, I don't know. I'm gonna say no on this, just because you can still have him readily available as the backup.
Sure.
But just not, you can still keep that red shirt as long as he doesn't play. So kind of, I don't hope anyone gets injured, but in a scenario where Caden Hauser gets injured and, we don't see Noah Kim, back, that that Sam Leavitt has to really step up and, take over. So I don't think he plays, but, that's still going to be kind of in limbo as the season, goes on.
Yeah, I think the most ideal scenario is obviously Caden Hauser stays healthy. And then, look, we've been pretty clear about how we expect this game to go. So if the game goes the way we kind of are expecting it to go, there's no reason to put Sam Leavitt in the game and burn his red shirt in this game. If you're going to do it, maybe it's against Indiana, you're trying to get another win, and maybe you do the whole 2 quarterback system thing like they did against Nebraska. But like if this game is 21-0 or something like that, and Hauser has struggled, I don't think you throw Sam Leavitt in there to try to jumpstart the offense like you did a couple weeks ago against Michigan, even last game against Nebraska, where they kind of had a plan to play him. I don't think you do that in this game if it's kind of going in that direction. I don't think there's any sense in that. So to answer your point, I'm just playing a hunch a little bit with my answer. So
no, I get it.
Yeah. So my last over under. Not the best of questions, I'll admit, but I was a little bit backed up today, and so I kind of had to throw one on there. The over-under point total for the game itself is 47.5. So where are you at on that, Aiden? Do you think there's going to be more than 47.5 points scored total between the two teams or under?
Yeah, I think for my score prediction, at least it's pretty close, but I'm going to take the over for 47.5. Hopefully it's a little more even than for, similar scores for MSU and Ohio State, but I'm going to take the over.
Okay. I'm squarely on the under in this one. I'm expecting less scoring than 47.5. So I'll just leave it at that. We can move on. All right. We're at an hour here, so let's try to do our place your bets a little bit more quickly than normal, Aid. We'll do very straightforward answers. I do have updates for us for our records. We both went 3-3 last week. So I am at 25, 25, and 1, and you're one game behind at 24, 26, and 1. So with that, we'll kick things off here with one of my favorite rivalry games in all of college football, and it's Miami at Florida State. Florida State is a 14.5 point favorite. Who do you like?
I think it's that might be too high of a line for me. I'm gonna take Miami to cover, but I do think Florida State wins that game pretty easily.
I'm with you. I'm going to take Miami to cover. They've been very inconsistent this season, and their offense has really struggled. But Florida State has kind of, even last week against Pitt, they won by 17, but it wasn't like this emphatic win. They kind of struggled early on. So I'll go with Miami covering with you, but I do think Florida State wins the game. Moving on. We've got number 8 Alabama is a 10.5 point favorite at Kentucky. So Bama coming off of that win last week over LSU. In a rivalry game, obviously a game that every year features a lot of talent. It's a tough, hard-nosed game, and now you go on the road directly after against a solid opponent in Kentucky. 10.5 is the line. How do you think this one plays out?
Yeah, I think Alabama figured out kind of their offense this year. Their defense is really good. I put them up there with Ohio State as one of the best defenses, but I think their offense, clicked last game against LSU. Granted, their LSU's defense has struggled, but I'm gonna pick Bama to cover the 10.5. I don't think they're, they don't have any room for error. I don't think they're messing around for the rest of the season. So I'll take them to cover.
Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit here, and I'm going to take Kentucky to cover the spread. And it does have to do with the fact that Alabama is coming off of the game against LSU and then hitting the road. I think there's a little bit of attrition there. So I'll take. I don't feel strongly about this. I would never bet this game, but I'll go ahead and take the Wildcats to cover in this one. All right, moving on to game 3. We've got number 18 Utah is at number 5 Washington. Washington is favored by 9.5.
Yeah, I'm going to take Utah to cover that 9.5. I think Washington has struggled a little bit in terms of stopping off. Like, I think they've struggled a little bit defensively in the past few weeks. And, we know what Utah is kind of known for is just being really physical. So I think their defense can help. I don't know if they win the game, but I think 9.5 is a lot. So I'll take Utah to cover.
All right, I'm going to stick with Washington here to cover the 9.5. It's a big number, but Utah. You make a good point about Washington's defense, but Utah's offense doesn't really scare me a whole lot. So I think I'll put my money on Michael Penix and that offense to have another big game, despite it being Utah, who's a good defensive team. So I'll take Washington. Game number 4. Number 17, Tennessee, is a 1-point favorite on the road at number 12, Missouri. Missouri coming off of the loss to Georgia last week, and they played very well. I was impressed by Missouri last week. But again, that physical exertion that you put forth against a Georgia team, how does that factor in this week?
Yeah, I'm going to take Tennessee to cover the 1 point. I think, they say you get 3 points for being at home. So really it feels like Tennessee -4 for that matter. So I think I'll take Tennessee to cover there. I think they've been better ever since their loss against Alabama, and just
figuring out that consistency with Joe Milton that's a big factor.
Yeah, no, I'm with you as well. I'm going to take Tennessee in this one. I think their run game will be the deciding factor here. Again, Missouri coming off of, they emptied the tank against Georgia, played very well, came up short, but it was a good effort. But I think that's it's going to take a toll, and so I'll take Tennessee with the run game covering the 1 point. It's practically a pick 'em, so I'll take the Vols.
Right.
All right, moving on. We're staying in the SEC. Number 10 Ole Miss is going to number 2 Georgia, and this game is also 10.5 on the point spread. Georgia now, back-to-back opponents who are ranked, top 15. So, is there any holdover after they had to exert themselves against Georgia, or do you like them to cover against Ole Miss?
No, I don't think there's any hangover for Georgia. I think they cover the 10.5. I think offensively, Carson Beck kind of is a little bit underrated in my opinion, compared to some of the other quarterbacks in college football right now. I think Ole Miss has really kind of played around a little bit the last few kind of weeks. They really kind of had control of that game against Texas A&M last week, and Texas A&M kind of came back into that game, and Ole Miss won on a field goal. So I think Georgia covers the 10.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to take Georgia as well. I was impressed by Mizzou, but that could have some an ignition. That could press an ignition switch for Georgia to dial in again. Not that they ever have to worry about that. It seems like Kirby Smart's always got that team dialed in, and it does seem like after. I don't like Georgia was never wobbly even at the beginning of the year, but it did seem like they weren't quite firing on all cylinders. It seems like they're starting to find their groove here, and we're starting to see maybe not the Georgia from last year or even the year prior, but like we're seeing this, we see why this team is at the top of the country again this year. And so, yeah, I'm going to stick with the Dogs. If I'm going to go out, if I'm going to lose, I'd rather lose, picking Georgia than going against them. So, and then finally, game of the week for me anyway is number 3 Michigan, 4.5 point favorite at Penn State. Who do you like in this game? Aiden, give me a pick.
Yeah, I think Michigan covers the 4.5. I think that, they've been really good this year. I know the teams they played aren't the best, but sure. I think Penn State, watching them against Ohio State, tells me everything I need to know in terms of kind of can a James Franklin team get over that hump and win a big game after, they won the Big Ten championship in 2016. So, that's 7 years ago. So it's kind of they got to figure that out. Can they win another game or another big game for that matter? And I don't think it's this week. I'm going to take Michigan to cover the 4.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to take Michigan as well. I just think they're more balanced than Penn State. I trust JJ. I mean, when I say trust, like I think JJ McCarthy is a better quarterback than Drew Aller is right now. I think Penn State, as high as I was on them this season, I think they might be a year away. I think those running backs are going to be back next year. I believe Drew Aller will be back next year. Maybe next year is the year that they can put all the pieces together. But it does seem like they might be a year away. So I'm going to go ahead and take Michigan this week as well. All right, and with that, we will make our Michigan State, Ohio State predictions. Aiden, I will let you go first as usual here.
Yeah, so kind of like I said, my prop bets or kind of the prop bets I proposed, I think it's going to be a little bit sloppy to start the first half. I think, Michigan State has not had the greatest of starts. They've started hot in games like against Rutgers, but in, Iowa, but other times they've struggled. I think Ohio State is definitely a second half team. They, really struggle in the first half for how much talent they have on offense and defense. Yeah, I think it's going to be 1/2 game, but the second half, Ohio State breaks away like they have, this whole season. I think, they win big. They win pretty easily. I have Ohio State winning 38-10.
All right. that's similar to what I've got. And I'm going to preface my prediction with this. I look at those games against Washington and against Michigan, and Michigan State's offense really struggled in both of those games. They got a garbage time touchdown against Washington. They didn't score against Michigan. As I said earlier, I hold Ohio State's defense in the same regard that I do Michigan's defense. And so, unfortunately, I'm going to call for a shutout here. I'm going to go Ohio State 38 and Michigan State 0. And I don't like that at all. But I just, again, I really question where the offense is going to come from in this game. Going back to my prediction against Michigan State, I had a similar thought about I'm not sure where the offense is going to come from, and I predicted Michigan State to score 17, which looking back on was silly because I even said in the podcast I'm not sure where the offense is going to come from. So I want to be wrong more than anything, but yeah, I'm going to go 38-0 unfortunately in this one. So. Yeah, an unfortunate way to end the podcast tonight, but that's where we're at. And there's nothing that I would like to see more than some of that 1998 magic sprinkled on again this week. I don't know the rankings came out tonight, but I'm not sure where Ohio State ended up. But
they're still at number 1.
Okay, are they? Yeah. So hey, sets the stage. Yeah. So,
yep.
All right, guys, appreciate you guys hanging in for the long haul here. Like I said, kind of made a quick adjustment with just the way the basketball game went, unfortunately, last night, and wanted to jump on right away and react to it. So this will be our last post game or last podcast of the week, but we'll see you next week after the football game, and at that point, we'll be getting ready for Michigan State and Duke. So as always, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.